On August 16, 2025, the U.S. State Department made a sudden and sweeping decision to pause all visitor visas for individuals from Gaza, sending shockwaves through humanitarian organizations and families alike. This abrupt halt came without prior notice or explanation, leaving many in confusion and distress. Among those most affected are children who were desperately seeking urgent medical care, treatments and surgeries that are simply not available in Gaza due to the ongoing conflict and severe shortages in the healthcare system. This sweeping visa suspension has left countless injured children, many suffering from life-threatening wounds caused by recent violence, stranded in overcrowded hospitals. Their families now face agonizing uncertainty, unsure if their children will ever receive the care they so urgently need. Aid groups and hospitals, who had worked tirelessly to arrange for these children's treatment in the United States, now find their efforts abruptly blocked. For many organizations, this pause represents not just a bureaucratic setback, but a devastating blow to their mission of saving lives. Gaza's hospitals are already overwhelmed, with doctors and nurses struggling to care for a flood of patients using limited supplies and outdated equipment. For many families, international medical programs have been the only hope for survival, offering a chance at life-saving treatment far from the violence. The U.S. policy has ignited fierce debate both at home and abroad. Critics argue that the move abandons the most vulnerable, while supporters cite security concerns. As the world watches, the question remains, can the U.S. balance its security interests with its humanitarian responsibilities? For these children, the answer could truly mean the difference between life and death. In response to the controversial visa pause, more than 140 House Democrats, led by Representative Debbie Dingell, took decisive action. They drafted and sent a strongly worded letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, urging him to immediately reverse the policy, at the very least for children who have been gravely injured. These lawmakers are calling for compassion and humanity, emphasizing that the United States has a long tradition of offering refuge and medical care to the most vulnerable, especially children caught in the crossfire of war. Their letter highlights the urgent need to prioritize the lives of innocent young victims above bureaucratic red tape. The lawmakers argue that denying life-saving care to children who are innocent victims of war is not only a moral failure, but also a direct contradiction of the values that America claims to uphold. They stress that the United States has always stood as a beacon of hope and compassion, and that turning away children in desperate need undermines that legacy. The letter also points out that children who were previously admitted to the U.S. for medical treatment have never posed a security risk. This, they say, is clear evidence that the existing system is capable of balancing safety with humanitarian responsibility. The lawmakers insist that the process can be both secure and compassionate, and that there is no need for a blanket ban. By challenging the logic behind the blanket ban, these members of Congress are making it clear that national security and compassion do not have to be at odds. They argue that it is possible and necessary to protect the country while still upholding the nation's moral obligations to help those in need, especially children. Their efforts have transformed what was once a quiet bureaucratic decision into a heated national debate. Lawmakers and advocates are now demanding greater transparency from the administration, as well as a more targeted, compassionate approach that does not punish the most vulnerable. The question remains, will the government listen and act to restore hope for these children? The administration defends the pause, citing national security concerns. Secretary Rubio points to allegations that some organizations arranging medical evacuations have ties to Hamas. The government argues that the visa process could be exploited, not just by children but by accompanying adults, and insists a full review is needed to close potential security gaps. The State Department frames the halt as a temporary, necessary measure to protect the country while new safeguards are developed. For now, humanitarian needs are on hold as security takes precedence. Critics counter that the vetting process for Gaza's medical evacuees is already among the world's strictest, with multiple layers of security and oversight at every stage. They argue that the current system is designed to minimize risk while ensuring that those in desperate need of medical care are not left behind. Before leaving Gaza, patients and their families must pass rigorous Israeli security checks. These checks include comprehensive background investigations, identity verification, and often in-person interviews. Security officials scrutinize every detail, from travel history to family connections, to ensure that only those with legitimate medical needs are allowed to proceed. Only after receiving Israeli clearance can evacuees even begin the process of applying for U.S. visas. This next stage involves additional layers of scrutiny, such as detailed interviews at the U.S. consulate, biometric data collection like fingerprints, and extensive intelligence screening. Each step is designed to catch any potential red flags. Lawmakers point out that this dual system of vetting, by both Israeli and U.S. authorities, has proven effective. Over the years, children and their families have arrived safely in the United States, received life-saving treatment, and there have been no reported security incidents linked to this process. They argue that imposing a blanket halt on medical evacuations ignores these robust safeguards and unfairly punishes some of the most vulnerable people who have already undergone extensive vetting and security checks. If there are new concerns or specific threats, lawmakers say, the solution should be targeted improvements to the process, not a total shutdown that could endanger lives and undermine trust in the system. Lawmakers now demand clarity. What specific threats prompted the visa halt? They want a timeline for the review and interim solutions to prevent further harm. Most urgently, they call for immediate exemptions for children needing emergency care, proposing expedited case-by-case approvals. The debate highlights a core dilemma: security versus compassion. The outcome will determine whether the U.S. can protect itself without abandoning Gaza's most vulnerable children.